Hey, welcome to Taylor's Trick-Taking Table. I'm Table, and I was in a debate the other day where someone was saying they don't like trick-taking games, they aren't fun. And what's super great is in college I took Debate 101, and there's this logical proof called straw man, where you can misconstrue the other person's argument or simplify it to something easier to kind of knock down, like a straw man argument. What's great is I just did that and said, oh, you don't like trick-taking games? You must not like games, you must not like fun, you're a horrible person. And I won the argument. It was really easy. What's cool about the game we're covering today, which is Vidrasso by Sean Ross, which, funny enough, we have kind of a straw man version of him right there. He's the designer also behind Haggis, which we covered earlier when I was dressed as a hot dog. But the hook to Vidrasso is it uses something called strawman, where in addition to having the cards in your hand, like most trick takers, part of your hand is actually face up on the table. So it's really interesting because your opponent can see part of your hand, but you can also see part of your opponent's hand. Let's go to the digital table and I'll show you how to play. The deck in Vidrasso is made up of 4 suits numbered 1 through 9. To set up the game, you're going to deal each player face down 8 cards. Then you're going to make 5 piles each consisting of a face down card and then a face up card on top of it. And each player is going to go 5 piles. Players are then going to take the 8 cards into their hand. A player's hand in Vidrasso includes not only these 8 cards that are in their hand, but also the 10 cards on their side on the table. But we'll get more into that during the card play. For now, the players are going to decide trump. It starts with the person who's not the dealer, if the scores are tied. So let's say the second player here. They'll look at their hand and they're going to decide either the trump rank or the trump suit for the round. So maybe player 2 here thinks they have a lot of this fall suit and they want the trump suit to be the fall suit. After the first player who decides trump has picked either trump rank or trump suit, the other player will pick whatever they didn't pick. So player 1 in this case is now going to pick trump rank. Looking at player 1's hand here, they notice they have a lot of 7s, so maybe they want the trump rank to be 7s. After trump rank and trump suit is determined, players will now each pick a card from their hand and put it into the score pile for their opponent. This is a tough decision because the lower numbers are actually stronger than the higher numbers, as you can see over here, where 1s are high and 9s are low. But what's tough though is any card in the opponent's score pile at the end of the game is just straight points for that player. So for example, if player 1 here picked this 5, that's 5 points for their opponent. After each player has placed a card from their hand into their opponent's score pile, the non-dealer player will lead to the trick. So player 2 here can play any of the face-up cards on the table or any of the cards from their hand. Let's say they lead with this blue 1. Now it's player 1's turn to play a card. In Vidrasso, the players have the choices of either following suit or playing a trump if they have a trump. So in this example here, player 1 can either play one of their winter cards or play one of their trump cards. And one of the trumps can be either any 7 that they have or any fall card that they have. So player 1 can play any of the trump they have, so this yellow 7, green 7, or blue 7, or this 6 or 8 fall, or they can just follow suit with the 5 or 9 winter. They want to hold on to their trump, so they're just going to follow with this 5 winter. So since 1 beats 5, because neither are trump number or rank, the player 2 here is going to take these cards. So that's 6 points for them at the end of the round. So since player 2 won the trick, they're going to lead to the next trick, and maybe they want to lead with a card from one of their face-up piles here. So they'll lead with the 3 yellow. Coming to the player 1 now, they can play again any of their yellow, any of their trump, and maybe they do think this is a good time to play their trump. So they play their 6 trump. Since 6 is the trump suit, they'll win it, so they've got 9 points. And these get revealed after the trick is resolved. So since player 1 won, maybe they lead with this 7. And remember, 7 is trump rank. So coming to player 2 here, they do have to fall suit, or they could play any trump. So they could play this 3, or any of these fall ones, but trump rank always beats trump suit. So if player 2 had played this here, they would still lose. So maybe they don't want that to happen, so they just play this 1. So the 7 beats the 1 because it's the trump rank, and player 1 will take that trick. These will get revealed. Say maybe the player 1 plays this trump rank again. So again, player 2 can play any of their trump suit, or they can fall suit with yellow and play this 4. But what's interesting in Vidrasso is, if you play the second trump rank, the later one wins. So the game would continue, and what's interesting is when you're out of a pile, so maybe player 1 plays this, wins that trick, this pile is just empty now. Fast forwarding to the end of the hand, players have played out all the tricks and now have a big score pile. Each player will count the number of points they have in their score pile, so 10, 18, they'll just count this all up, and at the end, they'll write down how many points they got. There's 180 points in a round, so it's always nice because you can kind of keep track of the total points by checking each other's score. Then you would pass the dealer marker over here, and what's interesting actually is after you add up your scores to the top here and wipe these for the next round, the person who, after we deal, the person who's picking either trump rank or trump suit first isn't the non-dealer, it's actually the person who's losing. If there's a tie, it would be the non-dealer, but in a rubber banding catch-up mechanism, the losing player is going to be the person who picks either suit or rank first. The person who starts the next trick will still be the non-dealer after, again, each player has put a card in their opponent's score pile. So you'll keep playing until someone has hit 300, and that would be at the end of a hand, because you don't count points until the end of a hand. And after that 300 or maybe 500 barrier has hit, whoever has the most points wins. So that is Vidrasso, and this game is so fascinating to me. The whole system of the straw man is so interesting because part of your hand is just known to you, part of your hand is known to everyone, but then part of your opponent's hand is known to everyone. Everyone being you and your opponent. But it's such an interesting way to handle hidden information. We've played before games that handle it by a draw deck or claim, probably one of the more common two-player games where you have a draw deck and there's, slowly information being pulled out of that. But the fact that you have, 5 cards behind a draw deck, but different draw decks, and you control the pace of when you draw from them is so interesting. I love that push and pull of whether you play cards from your hand or play cards from out on the table. Is the hidden information bad that you don't know it? Is it better to have it secret from your opponent as like a surprise? But it's your hand. You probably don't want too much surprise. There's a really fun tension, kind of fun pace to the game. I love the surprise of it too, and you controlling the surprise for the most part. Of course, I'm saying you control it, but there's also like following suit and being forced possibly to play some of your cards that are face up on the table. I think it's a smart choice to have the May trump and allowing players to May trump both in rank and in suits. I think increased trump, increased choice. And when you get an interesting choice at the start for what trump even is, you give players a perfect amount of agency to make them feel like they have ownership over their hand, even though a lot of it is either, face down and random, so they don't know what that is, or face up and known to everyone. So in a game that has kind of probably new variables to players and a lot that they didn't expect or didn't control, to kind of rein that back in and give them more control. That trump choice is very interesting. It's kind of a rubber banding catch-up mechanism, but not overtly so. A lot of the times, those catch-up or rubber banding ones, they have kind of a souring feeling to the person in first place. I'm thinking of, like Mario Kart or something, the blue shell in last place, where it's like, okay, I just got, the leader, like, oh, they just got taken down just for winning, and there's no real benefit to it. Whereas in this game, yes, the person who's losing gets that first choice, but since I've seen picking trump suit or trump rank lead to the victory, it doesn't feel like it's like an overpowering choice for the person who's losing. And it's a really interesting choice, because what do you do, right? Do you pick suit, which is 1/4 of the trump, or do you pick rank, which is like 1/9 of the cards? I've felt like I pick suit a little more often, but it's interesting because that choice, since part of your hand's face up and part of your opponent's hand, and then obviously the 8 cards in your hand, you have a lot of information. It's cool to have a game that's almost like, we've covered it before, but like Luz or like Pick Coco or Vamp on the Batwalk, where your opponents can see part of your hand, but not fully. So I love dabbling in that idea of like a Hanabi-like game, but not going full into it. So you get some of the choice, some of the decision space, but not have to be tied to the mechanism and try to make it like fully work in that way. It's a really cool way to kind of, have best of both worlds. My favorite thing about the trump rank decision is if you make it a really high number, you can just get free points. You know, if you have like a lot of 8s or a lot of 7s, it's a really cool way to, especially if you're winning, kind of maintain the lead. If you're winning by a lot, you definitely just want any points you can get to try to get to that 300 or 500 or whatever you ended the game on. So it's cool how like picking trump rank in that way can almost be like a kind of a furthering decision. Whereas like if you pick trump suit, you might not necessarily use that to your ability to get a bunch of points. It's awesome that this game even has a ton of choice in the smaller decisions too. So at the start of the hand, when you're picking which card goes into your opponent's, obviously you don't want to pick trump, right? So then you're wondering, do I give them a low number because it's fewer points? But it's a stronger card, so I might win more points with that card later. Or do I give them a high one, which is weaker, but it's just giving them points now? So what do? You're trying to balance this. Usually I just give like a 4 or a 5. And it's interesting that that choice of what to give them is also allowing the game to not have perfect information. It's cool how the game can kind of blend something that's necessary, which I feel like at a 2-player game you can't really have perfect information. It's blended into choice. So it's not like, hey, we're gonna shuffle the deck, one randomly is going over here, one randomly is going over here. That's out of the game, no one knows what cards they are. It's, oh, everyone can pick, so there is still not perfect information, but I just love how there's like a necessity that usually some games would just have a card dealt aside, but you can add choice to it in interesting ways. The nice thing about the strawman system is it kind of has built-in surprise. You know, I've always played it where when I pick trump, I'm not fully sure where all the trump is. And drawing into trump is just inherently a fun kind of moment for either person to get. And I think it works both ways, right? If someone draws into trump, the other person's obviously like, oh my gosh. But it's always bad when you pick the trump that the other person just draws into. You're like, oh my gosh, how could I have foreseen this? My only real complaint is that there's a lot of math at the end once you're digging through your score pile. Just the numbers are so big. There's a way you could just score as you win tricks, which I think is a valid way to do it. It does mitigate it. I think it slows the trick play a little bit down. And I think it's a tough problem to try to solve. I don't really know of a clever way to get around it. But I think that would be the only thing is you're doing a bit of math in this game. I personally love math, so don't mind it. But I could see that being a caveat for some people. So that is Vidrasso. And again, we're going to have rooms down below and the PDF if you wanted to check them out. I think it's a fascinating game. The whole strawman system kind of blows your mind, and I think it's a very elegant way to incorporate drawing and 2-player hidden information and surprise in a trick-taking game. It does all these things in a great, interesting way in a very smooth package. Thanks so much for watching.